Hey, Solar Mavericks. This is Benoy Thanjan, host of the Solar Maverick podcast and CEO of Reneu Energy. I'm excited to invite you to our winter solstice fundraiser. It's happening on Thursday, December 4th from 6 to 10 p.m. at Hudson Hall in Jersey City, New Jersey. It's going to be an incredible night, great food, amazing people from the clean energy community and an inspiring cause. We'll be raising funds for Let's Share the Sun Foundation, which brings solar power to families with medical needs where they need 24-hour access to electricity. Primarily, they're working in Puerto Rico. Early bird pricing for this event is $50, with full ticket pricing being $60. Space is limited, so grab your ticket today. We'll have a link to it in the show notes to RSVP. Thank you, and let's get into it.
At the end of the day, website can look pretty, but it's going to add to conversions. At the end of the day, how we measure success? Maybe you aren't a business, maybe you aren't measuring conversions, but sometimes it's hard to tell if people converted directly from the website. But my point is that every website should really express who you are and give people the information they need to contact you. So that's super important.
Hello and welcome to the Solar Maverick podcast, where solar meets entrepreneurship and experience. I'm your host, Benoy Thanjan, so let's get into it.
Hi, this is Benoy, your host of the Solar Maverick podcast. I'm really excited on this episode to have my co-host, Lee Wang. Lee Wang actually does the marketing for the Solar Maverick podcast, Reneu Energy. He was on episode 200 of the podcast. I'm really excited to have him. It's actually a follow-up to that interview. He's actually a Squarespace website designer, and he's actually done the website for Reneu Energy. And we've just recently actually just finished the Solar Maverick podcast website. And obviously websites are so important. And Lee, it's always great to have you on the podcast. Welcome. He's now co-hosted maybe 25 to 30 episodes. He came up with, people ask me, hey, you came up with such a great name. It's actually because of Lee. And then also the Solar Maverick podcast would have never happened without him because, he's I think this is a really good idea. And it's been an amazing journey for the past 7 years to 232 episodes, one of the most popular podcasts in solar. We never thought when we first started this journey 7 years ago, it would be in Harlem when we met with Kevin. Can you imagine to see the progress? And so I appreciate Lee being on this journey, and I wouldn't have got here without him. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Benoit. That's such a nice intro. Everyone out there in the soul world knows that Benoit is a maverick, and we don't say that word lightly. First of all, he's the big Top Gun fan, so the name is fitting, but if you've ever met Benoit, he does things differently, not on purpose, but just true to himself and his personality. So we thought the name, the Solar Maverick, was a fitting one, short, memorable, and also just not overstating anything. It's just a simple ethos that runs throughout this podcast. It's just with the idea of doing things your own way. And as Benoit said, I'm a Squarespace website designer. Of those unfamiliar with Squarespace, it's a all-in-one website builder founded by a gentleman named Anthony Castellanos. They're headquartered right here in West Village in New York City. And what they're known for, you might see a lot of their YouTube, podcast, or Super Bowl ads, but people always ask me, why do you design Squarespace? My story was that I was a journalist, and then print journalism was dying. So I went back to school at NYU, New York University, in their professional marketing certificate program, which is night school. And I started a small digital agency. We were doing search engine optimization, search engine marketing. And the part I liked the best about that business was creating the new website for the client. And at the time, we were designing in WordPress, and those familiar with different website platforms. WordPress is great for many reasons. It's open source, meaning you can do a lot with it as far as customization, but it's very powerful. And they have WooCommerce. They have a very strong commerce program, but it's just hard for average user to manage their site easily. If you look at their dashboard, it's not what Squarespace and other builders like Wix you might have heard of, where it's called a what you see is what you get editor. So on Squarespace, the big difference is when you're editing your site, moving pictures and content around, you see the actual changes in how they would look on as you're editing, as opposed to WordPress where you're working within an editor that doesn't replicate the actual look of the final page output. And at the time, my clients would just have a hard time managing these WordPress sites, and they were pretty costly to build. At the time was probably 2000, and I would say like 2015, just a guess around there. And the overall process was just harder. But one day on the back of the cab, I was on an ad for Squarespace, and I kind of piqued my interest and I learned about it. And Squarespace itself has come a long way as far as advanced features. They've released several versions since I've been with Squarespace. And I mean with, it just like they invited me in to be what's called a circle partner. So I have special privileges within Squarespace accounts. But the most important thing is I like Squarespace because you can make it look good and it's easy to use right at the end of the day. And, there are a lot of advanced customizations that you can do to a Squarespace site to make it look really great. And I think it's one of the best ways to get a website up quickly and have it look really good. And certainly ease of use, getting things to market is something we really talk about rather than sitting behind the scenes waiting for the right moment. Getting things to market, getting things live is super important in all regards of business, right? So Benoy just starting, he talked about the podcast and how we just went to meet Kevin Wyatt,
Brown. Yeah, I do.
Kevin, shout out to you. I don't know where you are in this world. He's a traveler, which is great. But thank you, Kevin, for pushing us. He sat down with us and we sat down in the studio and we thought we were just going to talk about the podcast and what it's going to be. He said, no, we're going to take the first episode. And we just did it. And same thing with Squarespace. Just get on there. Their slogan is a website makes it real, which is fortunately still true in this day and age, right? People will say, do you have a website? I don't care if you have Instagram, if you have this or that. Do you have a website, right? You've taken that extra time to create a digital property of your own that's not owned by Zuckerberg, right? At the end of the day, right? That's the thing about social media. I love social media for very positive things. Learn so much from people on social media, but beware that if you count, I got people say, well, you got a business, I got an Instagram. Young people say, I got an Instagram. I'm like, oh, what do you mean I got an Instagram? You don't got an Instagram. You got some space on someone else's platform, which I guess you could say that about Squarespace too. But at the end of the day, it's just a builder to set up your own property. You can always switch. You can always own that domain. We could talk a little bit about domains and, we're going to switch topics, but domains.
So that's the important topic.
People always talk about, well, what does it mean? They get confused about domain and what. So I always liken domains like a piece of land on the World Wide Web, right? So you buy a domain, that's your piece of land. You can build anything you want on top of that property, on top of that land, right? So you could build a skyscraper, you could build a tiny house, right? Whatever you want. That's the web equivalency, right? So own your domain, but you can build a Squarespace, you can build other things. But just importantly, at the end of the day, your ownership of that land, meaning that domain, is your ownership, right? So if you have it Instagram.com/ you don't own that, property. Someone else does. So you can have both. It's two different purposes. I don't think it's one or the other, right? It's two different purposes. And, just be careful about banking everything if you don't have a website, right? Or, you can say you have this or that, but a website does not have to be the be all and end all of everything related to your business, your personal brand. It can serve as just a jump point, but just a home base for everything you need. So we have episodes up at the solarmaverick.com. Is that the right?
Solar Maverick Podcast.
Yeah, solarmaverickpodcast.com, right? So we have that domain that we use, and same with Reneu Energy. These are home bases for Benoy that, you can go and learn about his company. But again, let's separate, the two distinct properties. They're related, but I think that's a big help. So don't hesitate if you feel like you need a better web presence or a new web presence, right? Through your website. So I really help people get the most out of, at the end of the day, website can look pretty, but it's going to add to conversions. At the end of the day, we're measuring for success, right? How will you measure success? Maybe you aren't a business. Maybe you aren't measuring conversions, but we don't, sometimes it's hard to tell if people converted directly from the website. But my point is that every website should really express who you are and give people the information they need to contact you. So that's super important.
Yeah, definitely. There's so many great points for it. Like, it's interesting. I had a one-page WordPress site. I went to a session, and Lee was always telling me, "Hey, Benoit, you got to really like put a real like website up." And it's interesting because he told me about Squarespace, and he's like, "Let's just spend like a Friday doing on it. It's better to get started and do something." And then just like talk about it. Like, it doesn't have to be perfect. We could always make changes. And we spent one Friday, maybe only 2 hours or 3 hours. And I was like so impressed with the quality of the website and with Squarespace. I mean, how much easier it is to use. It's so like user friendly compared to like WordPress. So, and then Lee's taught me a lot about Squarespace. I'm not the expert, but he is. And I think like there's such an importance with having a website and traffic. Like, I'm surprised how much traffic is generated from the content. And then it makes your business professional, and it's pretty easy to do, especially, finding experts like Lee does an amazing job. I highly recommend him. We'll have, his contact information in the notes of the podcast and the links of the Reneu Energy and Solar Maverick website. And also it's Little Ox, right?
Yep, littleoxworkshop.com. And I named my company. I didn't want to be like a highfalutin design agency. I don't have a formal design education, but my parents are architects. I think my mom especially is very creative. It's in my blood, the creativity. So I taught myself. That's another thing in life. Like, we live in the golden age of information. There's so much. I mean, I did go back to school, but I think I learned, no discredit to NYU and Benoit's alma mater, but the amount of information I would say the biggest difference is I think formal education is great for getting immersed in like a wider vision, but there are so many great, highly focused content makers out there. I mean, perfect example last night, Benoit and I are, for those who don't know, are both big football fans. I'm from Philadelphia, so I rep the Eagles, and Benoit represents the New York Times. But I was watching the broadcast last night of the Chiefs-Chargers game. It was on YouTube. It's a big streaming event. And they had on, I mean, I'm 52, so generationally, I don't know these new YouTubers, right? That's the actual now. And they had this whole commercial. I know the main guy, Mr. Beast, and I heard my son told me he has an incredible entrepreneurial story.
Oh, you should read his story for sure.
And I love hearing that. And he's the biggest name. I don't know if I'm using a term correctly, but out of the YouTubers, he's the most recognizable name. And there are a bunch of people on this commercial. So I really love this concept of YouTube, owned by Google. I don't know if I love it having so much control by Google, but this idea of this open source platform, right? And it's funny, there's this footage of early YouTube founders, and they're all worried they're not getting any views and they don't know what they're doing. It's hilarious to think that they built such a successful product. But I think at the end of the day, what I love about YouTube is you can really learn a lot, right? From how to install like a faucet to how to use Squarespace. So whatever it is, it's available, and it's up to the users to decide whether the content's worthy. So I think that YouTube itself is a very fair platform, right? If you create content that's compelling, you get rewarded, and it's just really amazing. Like, it's going to disrupt one, probably has.
It's already a disruptor.
Yeah, I'm not going to say, that's even a silly word, but the way TV is, right? Like, it's funny.
Especially the younger generation.
Yeah. I mean, we're veering a little off topic, but it just goes back to how important it is to own your own property. Regardless, I don't even want to be Squarespace biased. I like it, and I can go into why I like it more, and it's what I know. But other than that, I just encourage you to really seize your domain name and your properties and get like those ideas going. Just own that, right? Like, that's the thing. It's relatively cheap to snap up a domain. It's $10 to $20 a year, I think, still. And that's what I want to impart to anyone listening right now, is that get your properties on, get it for your family, create like your family tree online, right? You can preserve that. I think digital is going to be around for a while. So I don't know I'm not a futurist. I don't know what's going to be next, but, get everything lined up for your personal properties, business, personal, and use a website builder to get going. I think in the future, we may not have websites like the way we know them, because we just, in my lifetime, being Gen X, seen so much technological progression. So who knows what it is, but at least, get a sense of it. Just don't be afraid. I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, I'm afraid of things like that I don't know about, but once you start, get a little recognition, familiarity, you're good to go. I'll say I've been trying to throw up the YouTube channel, and this has been a struggle. Some days I get like 0 views, right? And it's fine. It's the process of learning. I'm learning how to like create title cards and like use a separate camera for the, I'm learning, but at least I started, and I got to keep going because you can always get better.
Yeah, I think the challenge is to get started, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people get hesitant to do it because of starting and they want everything to be perfect. But really, it's getting a minimum viable product. Then you're going to be learning from that experience and then really, going there. YouTube is now where like podcasting is going through. And obviously everyone wants video. We're actually at the Solar Maverick podcast working on that. It was interesting yesterday with the broadcast. Like they had 4 influencers, iShowSpeed, Roberto Morales, who I actually in Mexico.
Yeah.
And he's actually a big Giants fan. He has like 20 million followers on Instagram.
Wow.
And he actually follows me and he'll message me periodically. And it's amazing like how big he has gotten. Like he did like an exclusive cooking thing with the Fantastic Forecast recently. I actually have to listen to his broadcast and iShowSpeed. I'm curious to see, but this goes back, like it's all about personal brand. People are not buying from companies. They're more buying from people that they know, like, and trust, having videos on YouTube, having a website, whatever you may do. Most of the people listening to the podcast are in the renewable energy industry. We're seeing a lot more content too being created on YouTube for videos and things like that. And it's great, Lee, for you to start the YouTube channel. And I think you have a lot of great content to share. I've seen some of the videos and, I think it's great that you're doing that. This is going back to the website, but how can a well-designed website, we kind of talked about this, amplify a company's mission and credibility?
Yeah. It's like often people's first impression, right? And we meet them at the conference, hear about them on podcasts, and then they're, Google and check out the website. So it's always a first impression. And I just think that one simple thing is make sure your website's really neat, right? I think that's this funny word, but if you go into someone's house and it's not neat, it just doesn't feel inviting, right? So a very basic principle, I'll take over clients' websites and it's just so messy, just spacing.
Oh, yeah.
And
That's a good point.
just the scale of it. So just make sure everything you present is first super lined up. There's a lot of tricks, but proportions are the biggest thing. For website, I see common mistakes, right? Just the proportions are off. Fonts are too big or small, whatever it is. Sometimes you can use really big fonts for effect, but it's just how you apply them that really matters. So just, if you can learn how to use that grid and line up everything really neat, that could be hard for some people. So you might need some outside help, but make sure that your house is neat, right? When you're inviting guests over, think about the website it's open 24/7. So guests can come in anytime to look at your house. It's not like your actual house. You can clean up before the guests come there. Yeah. So just make sure that's happening. Look professional. I honestly am old school. I can't believe that the standards for showing up to work have been so low. I remember I worked at a PR firm in Manhattan and people were just dressing pretty casual to go to work, and I would still try to, I'm not saying that I'm better than anyone, but I'd rather just show up to work in case who knows who's going to walk the office. And I don't care, but I do it for myself is just have some pride in distinguishing what work is from leisure time. I know we're planning, and I'm not going to be a grumpy old guy at this route. I feel a certain appearance. Let me clarify that, because even if you're dressed casual, there's a way you can do it that is respectful towards other people. I mean, again, it goes back to that word, neat, right? It's I don't know, whatever you define that is. I'm pretty open-minded when it comes to style and things like that. So I'm not trying to define what your style is, right? I'm trying to tell you to button up whatever that style is, right? Make it look professional. Am I going to entrust you? Do I want to give you a lot of money to do something for me if you're not looking like you would take responsibility for that? I know the world is superficial, but it is. So let's accept that. And people are going to judge you anyway.
People are judging you by your appearance. They're making all these assumptions. the better you dress.
Yeah.
Makes a huge
That's why I'm very careful. Like, I know what you mean, Benoit, by saying better, but it's just an attention to detail.
Yes.
Because you're going to be hopefully giving your client, your customer, that same attention to detail as how you would present yourself. So it just goes back to your website. You ask a long-winded way of saying, like, make sure your website's super neat.
Oh yeah,
It's organized, it's easy to find. I always joke, generally websites should be home, about, services, content.
yes.
Something like that, right? Some kind of variation on that, right? Like, might be portfolio, set of services if you're an artist, but generally home, about, services, contact. Like, people always like, oh, yeah, they want to have these fancy this and that and call their section. It has to be easy to use first. Basic structure, just people understand where they can navigate, get information. Unless you're like a creative artist that you want to express yourself, I don't recommend deviating much from a standard website structure. People, logo on the left, or like just how you would use an interface, right, on whether it's your phone or desktop. Don't go too crazy straying from the structural foundations, right, of the website. Like, make it easy for people to understand how to use things. And also use language on your website that's easy to understand at first. Like, don't get too technical. Don't try too hard to be different. Use conversational language to describe what it is you can do for someone. Like, the unique comprehension, right? And though there's too many words, they'll use too many long sentences. I mean, there's always going to be exceptions, but like in general, make your brand identity shine so people know, like, okay, great. Like, I always say this, there's tons of talented people in every profession. Benoit does the solar energy, what I do, website design, but at the end of the day, if you're going to work with someone, are you going to relate with them? Are you going to enjoy the process? And that's going to get better results given all things equal with the talent or skill level, right? So personal brand and everything, like, it's branding, I would say, which I define.
It's better brand than
Yeah, I've heard in the past, from other people, it's a gut reaction towards a business, right? So the brand is going to make a huge difference. Like, it's funny. So I grew up, like, one of my favorite clothing labels is Ralph Lauren, because it kind of grew up with it, and it's a brand. He's a Jewish guy who created like a Western identity, right? So, but he created this mythology of like Western, preppy, old money, or something like that. Like, he's from like New York. He's not of the actual like waspy background that he represents.
Yeah.
And I was settled into the classics, whether or not a lot of people do what same thing he does, with like basic pants and shirts and things like that. But sometimes it's funny, like, they'll sell the same product off his website versus Macy's. It's the same product. But to me, I still go to Macy's. It's a mainstream brand. I'm not a snob. But I feel like the same product that's on his website looks more premium. It's the same exact shirt versus being on the Macy's website. And that's a branding thing. And both actually have strengths, right? Like, being on the Ralph Lauren site, polo shirt, whatever it is, $100, looks more prestigious on his site versus at Macy's, where it's just, just lumped in with a bunch of other products from doesn't look as specialized or exclusive, but both have benefits. Some people do not want that. They like the Macy's,
Yes.
egalitarian, like, feeling that you can go in, you can still get a good value. And my point in telling you this is that branding and how you feel about something is super important. But always go with your actual identity, meaning if you feel like Macy's or if you feel like Ralph Lauren, it's who you are. We can't lie about it. At the end of the day, we can front all we want, but at the end of the day, our true personalities will always rise to the top, right? Whether or not you believe in God or whatever we're put on this earth, we can't fight our DNA. Like, I always joke, like, everyone knows this, but you just kind of become a certain version of your parents, like, no matter what. It's inevitable, right? You gotta have like different attributes based on your culture and your generation, but it's funny, like, we can't escape our past or our tradition. So, ask yourself the question, what do you represent? And pull out your strongest points, right? I would say that if someone asks me, what is your brand identity? I would say it's tasteful design, minimalist design with the intention to the copy, the words on the site and how that's expressed. I think that's what I bring to the table. Mostly just that intangible, like, everything matters, right? So every touch point matters, right? So it's small details add up, and people who have worked with me have seen a dramatic difference because I help them bring that out.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, there's so many great points. I think, what I would like is the simplicity of the website that you focus on. I think for me, like, I have all this information, and then you're able to summarize it in a concise way within 5 tabs, right? I think like the problem with a lot of websites, people don't realize like you're having people who don't know your company, and then it's like so complicated, and everyone kind of has a format in the head that you just kind of explain. So for me, like, I know even with the Reneu Energy website, I've taken some parts and probably added parts that I shouldn't have added because, I have all these different ideas. But at the end of the day, like when we look at like what pages people look at, it's the same 4 or 5 pages, about us, the company profile, the beginning, and being short and concise. And, Lee, actually, you really help with what should be said, and how it should be said. And I mean, I think it's great to work with you on it because it's not just like creating the website. There's so much more into it, as you talked about. It's really organizing the thoughts, building that personal brand. I know you focus on what the authenticity of that person, right? To reflect it, or the people from that company on the website. So I appreciate you going into that.
Yeah.
And then you talked about too, like content strategies, thought leadership blogs, podcasts. We talked about that. YouTube, like, I guess, what are people doing to like with content strategies into websites to increase SEO?
Yeah, I think more and more, like, it's always changing. Search engine optimization, SEO is always changing, but blogging always works, even though it seems old-fashioned. But it's not because people are reading blogs. It's because the Google sees that you have a lot of relevant content. Relevancy is the biggest word. Like,
Oh, well, that's a fair point,
right? Like, it's like, is it relevant to the search intent? So if you work in solar, make sure you're using a lot of keywords in your titles and meta descriptions, meaning the little paragraph below your search engine result that just tells you what it is you're trying to share with them. Always share knowledge, right? That's the thing. It's like, you can give away a lot of stuff for free, but no one's going to be able to do what you do because you're a professional, you're a specialist in what you do. So, but I'm big on YouTube. I think like learning how to do videos and present, it's just a great skill, like having a presence.
Oh, for sure.
Even if it's not a natural thing, if you're an introvert, like learning how to speak clearly and
Concisely.
yeah, and just really, create. But I think YouTube is a fun place. It's a fun universe. Like it's really a weird universe. They go on YouTube and they're telling me I should watch all these shorts of people like getting into confrontations and like fighting each other, which is kind of fun. It's human nature to enjoy these types of contents. Or from my son who's 14, like I don't even know what that stuff that he watches on. It's a lot of video game streaming, but whatever it is, it's like they know how to get people.
Twitch.
Yeah, I don't really even know all this stuff, but you asked me what content I think is like. I think video is a great way to practice and present things because you can show things you can illustrate things with video. That's the thing. It's like I can teach you in text how to do something on a Squarespace page, but it's not the same as just visually showing you how to actually drag and drop something into this space and just resize something. So I think that's super important medium for content, but overall just make sure, like, if you're talking about it anyway, you can capture it. Not everyone has to do content either, but it is a great way if you want to increase your search footprint. It may seem like an uphill battle at first. It very much is so. There's so much out there, but like anyone who wants to make something in life, just enjoy the process. And I think that's such a cliche, but it's true. You have to enjoy doing it. Find something, right? You can't just sit back and expect people to come to you for, like, we're sitting down doing this podcast. Even if I touch one person, they come to me, I'm going to help them, right? Like, always come this. I'm sure you do this, Benoy, in your business, right? And like, yeah, you want to make money. We all business, but like, I feel like you actually feel like if you were to help guide someone in their solar project, you could help make them more money, bring tremendous value, right? Whatever you want to say. Like, you wouldn't be sitting here. Oh, maybe some people fake this, but I think that's disingenuous and not a good way to go through life if you can't really back up what you say you're going to do, right? I feel like, if I'm going to work with you on my solar project, I don't have any solar developments in my portfolio, but like, that's the thing is, like, you want to go out there and you want to help people no matter what it is you do, right? Like Kevin Y. Brown, man, you were leaning us. You're like, come over here and start podcasting. I'll get you going. And to his credit, he got us up. Right. He got the result at the end of the day, right? Like, how many episodes are you in now?
233.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot of episodes. That's a lot. Kudos to everyone who helps other people get started. Just maybe instilling that confidence.
Yeah. I mean, he instilled confidence in us, right? And then it's interesting because we were his first client. So like there's a loyalty there too. But if Kevin Y. Brown's the executive producer of the Solar Maverick podcast with me. He also has agents. He has a podcast editing company called Podcast Laundry.
Yeah.
He still, by the way, has true passion for podcasting and like was like so passionate about and so supportive because we had a lot of hesitations about recording that first episode of the Solar Maverick podcast, which was interesting because I ended up using the equipment wrong and we actually didn't have a good like taping of it. Yeah. So we actually did episode 1 again. But yeah, even with Kevin too, because I came up to Kevin and said that I wanted to be on his podcast. It would be a great interview. And then Lee heard the interview and was like, this sounds really good. We should look into whether there are other solar podcasts, and worst case scenario, we'll learn a lot from the experience and your public speaking skills will get better, which it has, but then it's also gone to another level as well. Yeah. So that's so true. Like helping people and adding value with your expertise. Right. So do you have any like closing advice for companies like aiming to stand out digitally or telling their story effectively? I mean, you pretty much have already talked about
it.
This.
No, I think that's also very simple, right? Just go in a room. You can call this summit and journalware. Just ask questions, what you really meant. Just, so what I always use with my clients is a 3-part question, which is, and write this down, listeners. Just ask these questions. So what? Who cares? Why you? Right? If you can answer that, you're halfway there. Start there. Really be honest with yourself. You should be able to answer that. And it may not be perfect, but start there. Why the hell are we even doing this, right? Kind of like, what are we in this game for, right? Or it starts somewhere. Everyone has a story, right? I'm sure, Benoy, you didn't just wake up and say, I'm going to be a solar energy expert. Like, something led me to that path. And, figure that out. Like, was it Simon Sinek, the why? Is it someone's famous marketer talks about, like, know your why? And I see so many silly, I don't call it silly, but, like, people are like, my why? And it's always, like, picture of their wife and kids, or I'm like, I'm like, that should be automatic, man. Like, it's not your why. Tell me your why. Like, hopefully, like, provided your family is already alive. Like, set that one aside. Tell me what your other why is. Like, I really am happy when I help people and they're like, oh my God, thank you so much for your help for getting me a website that I'm really proud of and I can tell people, right? That's the confidence, right? A good website, good clothing is going to give you a good haircut. It's going to give you confidence, right? It's not the actual, thing. Wow, like if you're proud and represent you, go to my website, check out, I have all the answers there. If you say that, like, how many of my clients come to me before? I have a website, but I'm a conference. I really don't want to send people, and I have to make excuses. Well, it's under construction, this and that. Walk around this earth with everything lined up, proud, shirts pressed, website tight, fresh fade on the haircut, whatever it may be, right? Like, these are things you can take care of. These are within your control, usually. I would not say for everyone, but if you can make sure your shirt is not wrinkled and your website has good spacing and it's easier to read, hopefully these are things are within your control and that you care about them, because, I'm looking at everything. People, like back what we just said, people are judging you whether you like it or not. Like, you for sure, you can't help that. Life is unfair. We're kind of talking about this before we start taping, but like, life is unfair. And you can say that, you can say it's fair. It's kind of fair because it is unfair, right? Like, it's like everyone's unfair, right? Everyone has to overcome something. And like, example, like we talked about Mr. Beast, right? We were talking about Mr. Beast, right? I really know who Mr. Beast is. For those who don't know, apparently he's the biggest YouTuber. Like, I love that's a noun. And my son was telling me that he's a master of self-discipline. I'm not sure his exact story, so
I know his story really well, actually.
Apparently, he worked his ass off. He did to form who he is, and that's what I want you to take away. Is like, it's like everyone seems like people always hate. Like, I always laugh when people are like, "I hate the Kardashians." I always laugh at that line. I'm like, do you really need for them to even have a strong feeling to them? I think that Kris Jenner, the mom, is a genius. There's millions of rich families in LA and entertainment But she was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to turn my family, my daughters into this commodity. And it's their choice. And they build an empire. And people say, I hate this or hate that. But man, you just got to give them credit. Like, I don't choose to consume it, so I don't have any feelings for that. But it's just funny. I just like laugh at people who put forth that much energy when they have to look in the mirror and say, well, am I putting this much effort into whatever I'm doing? Right? Like,
Yeah.
there's a system. We live in America, or I mean, I'm going to assume everyone, we might have an international.
We have international, like the 5% is in the US.
But if you live in a free society, I will say that chances are for you to create. So I'll leave it at that.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I would say if you're interested in learning more about Mr. Beast, he had an amazing podcast interviewing in the Diary of a CEO, Steve Bartlett. It came out the early 2025. Mr. Beast's real name is Jimmy Donaldson. And
Okay.
it highlights actually his work ethic and mental health. It's interesting hearing his story. Also his hiring philosophy and his financial strategy and risk taking. He actually has like a whole book online you could watch for free. You could get the PDF for free on his strategy of building a social media empire, which I read it and I thought it was pretty interesting. Yeah, this has been a great interview, Lee. Is there anything that we haven't covered about website design that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I just leave you with the website design isn't about website design. A good website is a sum of that. You can wield it and you can make things look good, but it has to have some part and energy.
Yeah, for sure. And then if our audience wants to learn more about you and the amazing work that you're doing, what's the best way?
Yeah, just go to littleopsworkshop.com. And that's where my home base is. And then you can find me on Squarespace Marketplace under the same name. But just, I'm here to help.
Yeah, definitely. This has been an amazing interview. Like, I've worked with Lee on 2 of our websites. We'll have the notes of how to contact Lee. He's worked on the Reneu Energy website. We just finished the Solar Maverick podcast website, which I'm really excited about. And I appreciate Lee making the time on a Saturday morning to share his knowledge to our community. And thank you again, Lee. This is a great interview.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Solar Maverick Podcast. The Solar Maverick Podcast is brought to you by Reneu Energy. We're a solar development and consulting firm. If you believe that this podcast is adding value to you, please give us a 5-star review and share with those that you think could benefit from this information. Please email all questions, suggestions, and feedback to info@reneuenergy.com. That's info@reneuenergy.com. The Solar Maverick Podcast is produced by Podcast Laundry and executive produced by Benoy Thanjan and Kevin Y. Brown.